In September 2019, thousands of people drove deep into the Nevada desert, intent on storming a highly classified military facility. The event started as a joke on Facebook, a prank that quickly spiraled out of control. The fact that over 2 million people clicked "attending" online reveals a deep cultural fixation. For decades, the public has imagined this specific patch of desert as a subterranean prison for extraterrestrials and captured spacecraft. The physical reality is much more mundane, but highly restrictive. The facility sits completely isolated inside the Nevada Test and Training Range, a barren 12,000 square kilometer stretch of government-controlled land where the nearest town has a population of barely 50 people. To see what actually happens out there, we have to look past the internet memes. The myth of the alien base exists because the United States government actively cultivated a vacuum of information during one of the most tense periods in modern history. The seeds of this hysteria were planted in July 1947, when a rancher in Roswell, New Mexico, found scattered debris on his property. For a single day, the local Army airfield issued a press release claiming they had recovered a flying disc, before rapidly retracting the statement. That sudden retraction gave conspiracy theorists a permanent foothold. By the late 1980s, men like Bob Lazar were making lucrative careers out of the secrecy. Lazar claimed the military hired him to reverse engineer an alien spacecraft powered by element 115, generating an anti-gravity field. But the real element 115, moscovium, decays in a fraction of a second, producing zero gravitational properties. As investigators looked closer, Lazar's personal history also fell apart. He claimed to hold degrees from MIT, and when universities confirmed he had never been enrolled, he argued the government had erased his academic records to silence him. What emerged at Area 51 was a feedback loop. Private individuals filling a void of facts, while the government weaponized that very misinformation for its own strategic ends. By the early 1950s, the United States and the Soviet Union were locked in an escalating nuclear standoff. Both nations were testing atomic weapons, and the threat of total annihilation created intense geopolitical paranoia. The American military faced a severe logistical problem. They had no reliable way to verify what was happening deep inside Soviet territory, and this was years before orbital satellites existed. In 1953, President Dwight D. Eisenhower authorized Project Aquatone. The directive was straightforward: build an intelligence-gathering aircraft capable of flying so high and so fast that it could photograph Soviet nuclear sites without ever showing up on radar. Testing an entirely new class of aviation required absolute secrecy. The CIA selected Groom Lake, a dried-out lakebed tucked inside the existing Nevada nuclear testing grounds. It was perfectly flat, surrounded by mountains, and completely hidden from public view. The engineers succeeded in building the aircraft, but that created an immediate practical problem. They had to test highly experimental planes in the open sky, right above the American Southwest, without letting Soviet spies figure out what they were looking at. The planes they tested out of Groom Lake, specifically the U-2 and later the SR-71 Blackbird, looked like nothing else on Earth. The SR-71 was a sleek, flat wedge of titanium cruising at 3,400 kilometers per hour at an altitude of 24,000 meters. A typical commercial passenger plane flies somewhere between 10 and 12,000 meters. The military's new reconnaissance fleet was operating at more than double that height. This extreme altitude created a highly specific visual phenomenon. If you look at the vector cross-section of the Earth at dusk, the Nevada desert below has already fallen into dark twilight. But because the spy planes are flying so high, their metal hulls still intersect the direct, intense rays of the setting sun. To a civilian standing on the dark ground, the shape of the aircraft is entirely invisible. All they see is a blinding, glowing object tearing across the sky at thousands of kilometers per hour. The people reporting flying saucers during this era were not hallucinating. They were making highly accurate observations of cutting-edge human engineering, completely stripped of its geopolitical context. The CIA quickly realized the sudden spike in UFO reports offered a perfectly packaged counterintelligence asset rather than a liability. Rather than correcting the public, the government maintained a policy of strategic silence. They investigated civilian sightings through Project Blue Book to ensure their flight logs matched up, but they let the alien theories circulate unchecked. They actively used these cover stories to mask separate operations. The 1947 Roswell weather balloon explanation was specifically designed to hide Project Mogul, a top-secret network of high-altitude surveillance balloons meant to detect the sound waves of distant Soviet nuclear tests. Letting the public debate the existence of Martians proved to be the ultimate camouflage. As long as the media focused on flying discs, nobody was asking questions about American spy planes. We only know the operational details of Groom Lake today because of Freedom of Information Act releases in 2013 and 2017. Through these documents, the CIA officially acknowledged Area 51 and detailed the extent of the spy plane cover-ups. This declassification confirmed that for half a century, the official explanations for sightings, weather balloons, and atmospheric anomalies were deliberate fabrications. The revelation turned Area 51 into a permanent symbol of official gaslighting. For skeptics, it provided concrete proof that the military could maintain a massive, decades-long lie right in front of the public's eyes. By prioritizing military secrecy over public transparency, the government secured its Cold War assets, but permanently hardened the skepticism of the people it was meant to protect. The military's approach has shifted away from strategic silence. The Pentagon now publicly releases its own cockpit footage of anomalies, deliberately using the term unidentified aerial phenomena, or UAP, to strip away the science fiction baggage. They established the UAP task force with a very grounded directive. They aren't looking for extraterrestrials. They are trying to identify real terrestrial incursions into American airspace, from advanced drones or rival nations. The U.S. military pulled off a massive sleight of hand. They convinced the entire world to stare directly at their most classified spy planes and report seeing flying saucers instead.